Hey, welcome to the show. I'm sitting here by myself again. What else is new? I mean, that's what happens usually here lately is good old Sean just gets to sit in a room by himself and wait for everybody else to, have all the fun and, do stuff on other shows or hold it. It's Vince.
I'm here.
There
I'm
he
here.
is.
Haven't
Yeah,
moved.
baby.
I
Yeah,
haven't
baby.
moved in 4 hours and 15 minutes.
I gave you an opportunity to get up and stretch your buns before
Nah.
we started this thing because man, I tell you what, I was literally, I don't do a lot of 3-hour shows. And Brian and I did a 3-hour show yesterday. And I was, my old bones were stiff when I got up from this seat and walked
Yeah.
around a little bit. I don't know how he does it all the time, man.
Seriously. I feel like if I got up now, I wouldn't want to sit back down. So I'm just going to ride the wave. I'm just going to ride it. I'm going to ride it all the way through. So
that's right.
Yeah.
Appreciate you guys being here. Salty was trying to goad me into starting earlier in the chat, and I'm like, it's just me. Vince is doing the other show with Brian.
Right.
Jesse texted me earlier saying he's running late. There's some big project he's working on. This actually works out kind of well because, like for him, he won't obviously be joining the show since we're just getting started quite as late as he thought he would. So we'll see.
Oh, that's
when
true.
he pops in. He could be here in the next 15 or 20 minutes. So
okay,
we'll see. We've got a lot to discuss. In the meantime, I know Vince, just had some opportunity to discuss a lot of stuff. I don't know how much the AD stuff came up earlier today in 4 hours. I'm guessing it came up at some point. So.
Not really.
Really?
Not a whole
Are
lot.
People done with it already?
It didn't really come up.
Yeah. Jason says Jesse has to finish a contract. That's right. He's back over in Sandusky waiting for signals on who the hit is going to be on. I saw it's funny because I don't know who this was. Somebody retweeted it. There was someone was tweeting some stuff and then someone did a screenshot and was like, is this guy like signaling people to, like do some weird stuff or what? And just reading the tweet, it was like, it definitely read that way. Like there was, coded messages in the tweet someplace, but, and I'm not talking, let's just go ahead and get started. What do you say?
Sounds good, man. I'm ready to roll. Yeah, there's some good ones in here. Some ones that I had to really think about. This is going to be interesting. I'm curious to see where you go with some of it.
By the way, if you missed yesterday's show, and I know we started about just about an hour after the main Jack Swarbrick news show yesterday that we did for 3 hours. So if you missed IB Nation Sports Talk last night, had Notre Dame women's basketball coach Neil Ivey on, so you can find it, of course, either on the Irish Breakdown YouTube channel or podcast, Spotify, Blue Wire, wherever you want. So you can check that out. Some interesting stuff. We talked about the trip to Paris. They're going to Croatia this summer. Talked about Olivia Miles' health. She had a little reaction to the Jack Swarbrick news and talked about all 4 incoming new players, 2 freshmen and 2 transfer portal players. So
it's good stuff.
Check all that out. A lot of good information from head coach Neil Ivey, and we appreciate her adjusting her schedule because, as I said, we were supposed to record the interview at 11 o'clock yesterday morning.
Whoops.
But that's when she got called to a meeting that I was told was from the higher ups.
Uh-huh.
And it turned out it was very high up because that's all the coaches apparently were summoned to that for the announcement and everything. They were all kind of caught off guard with that. And apparently Brian talked about this. Word was starting to leak out. They were going to apparently do this a little bit later, but they went ahead and did it early because they wanted to get ahead of it rather than.
I actually got a text from somebody 5 minutes before we got the email. So
really?
Yeah. So like the word was starting to spread, especially if this particular individual caught wind of it. It was definitely spreading. So
right.
Yeah.
Smash the like button if you would on your YouTube as you're watching right now. And of course, subscribe, rate, review. We do appreciate it. So Vince, along those lines, athletic director, you're going to have one Notre Dame alum taking over for another Notre Dame alum. Just how important do you think it is for a Notre Dame alum to be the Notre Dame athletic director rather than, as opposed to having previous athletic director experience?
I would say it's important to fans that's the only portion that it's important to. It's important for like public opinion as opposed to the actual day-to-day operation of the job itself. I don't think it matters in any way whatsoever that the person in the job is a Notre Dame alum. I think it's a nice little selling point for the fans. But at the end of the day, I don't think it matters. That wouldn't be like, that would be like 25th on the boxes to check for the athletic director. I just don't think that that's that important. But I understand how it makes it sound to the public when you put that out there. Oh, 93 Notre Dame grad. Like that's like the lead sentence, right? In the press release. And so I get it, but it is so far down the list of anything important.
It seems like just the way things have developed since Jack Swarbrick took over. Now, there are obviously a lot of people working in the athletic department who are not Notre Dame alums themselves, but it seems like once you have a Notre Dame alum, and that's, like Kevin White was not a Notre Dame alum, and there have been others who were before him who were not either. And it's kind of a mixed bag. Kevin White did a lot of good things for the Notre Dame athletic department, but at the end of the day, he whiffed on a couple of head coaching, football head coaching hires. And we were talking about legacy yesterday. That cost him. Jack Swarbrick, no matter what you think about Brian Kelly right now, the Brian Kelly hire in the long run ended up being a good one in terms of stability, getting him back on the national scene, that whole thing. Marcus Freeman, good for the short term right now. But I guess, like when I look at just how important being an alum is, it seems like when you've got a Notre Dame alum who's been in that seat for 15 years and who was obviously part of the process of finding his successor, that probably means a lot more to him. And to the donor base, the alumni base, I'm sure that means a lot to them.
I get it. Yeah.
But like I look at a place like USC, which is very high profile themselves, and hasn't done them a lot of good having some alums like Pat Hayden, Lynn Swan. Garrett was there for a while before things fell apart for him at the end. So it's like, I don't think it's as important as maybe it's made out to be. Kind of like you were saying, like maybe it means a lot to the fans. I think it means a lot, like to Notre Dame people, to people who have been there. I think it means a lot. But I do, as you look at what the first big decision is, what the first big thing, that's the TV contract, obviously, and the apparel deal being after that. Like, as I said yesterday, their independence is relying on what happens with this next TV contract, in terms of the money that they're going to get back. So I think that like even though just being a Notre Dame alum, as you said, not the end all be all, not nearly the most important thing, but when you look at what lies in the balance, I think it probably, I think there is at least some value to having a Notre Dame person in that seat, because you don't want like a non-alum, I think, probably coming in at a time like this where literally like your independence is teetering in the balance going forward, how much it means to them to be independent. You don't want to have to explain to a non-Notre Dame person what that means and just how important that is.
Sure. I get that 100%. I think that's also, let's pretend that they got this exact same succession plan and they brought in a non-Notre Dame person. That's why you have a year under Jack Swarbrick where you can learn what it is to be Notre Dame. And I understand that that's a bridge that now they don't have to cross, because obviously this guy understands what it's like to be at Notre Dame and what Notre Dame is all about and all of those things. And anybody that says Notre Dame is similar to any other school in the country is fooling themselves. They are different. Forget it. The independence thing is really important. And I think it's really important to Notre Dame people, right? I also think, and this might rub some people the wrong way, and I apologize, but in my dealings with Notre Dame people, they're elitist. Like if you're not Notre Dame, then you don't matter. And there's part of that where now with this guy coming in, if they didn't know who he was, the fact that he's got Notre Dame attached to his name,
that says something to them right away.
He must be great.
Right. That says something. That's a big selling point. Again, like to the people who are writing the checks, who are funding the facilities and, you know, all these different things, that means something. It means a ton to them. So there is some value to that. Now,
and I get
to
that.
me, you know, again, like when you look at being an alum versus having athletic director experience, as Brian and I talked about yesterday, Jack Swarbrick didn't have AD experience. He had zero experience in intercollegiate athletics. Yeah. And Pete Bavacqua is a lawyer as well. I mean, he's got a law degree from Georgetown. He's done a lot of good things working around sports, but not necessarily, you know, not on this side of the fence. But again, neither did Jack Swarbrick. His background, you know, he worked around sports, whether it was gymnastics or the commission down there in Indianapolis and that different kind of thing. Really good businessman, obviously.
Sure.
And when you look at Pete Bavacqua's resume, really good businessman. And again, what's the biggest decision that is looming over Notre Dame? The next TV contract. And he has
business
experience on both sides of the aisle,
sure,
negotiating those contracts. When he worked for the PGA, he negotiated contracts with TV networks for the PGA. When he worked with NBC, he, of course, negotiated TV contracts with a litany of different athletic, you know, entities. So I think that obviously is a huge part, along with being an alum, because of what you said, the selling point, because like a lot of people might not have known who Pete Bavacqua was the day before yesterday, but just the fact that he has, as you said, Notre Dame 93 right next to his name, that's going to carry a lot of weight.
That's all a lot of people need to know. That's all. I mean, they read that, they're like, oh, must be great.
Yep.
You know?
Exactly.
So, but I do think Notre Dame is doing it the right way, bringing him in for a year, letting him work with Swarbrick. Because look, I had somebody tell me today that they are so happy that Swarbrick's leaving because he was an asshole and all this other stuff. Okay, that's fine. I get that to a degree. But he also did a lot of really good things for Notre Dame, and he also substantiated their independence very, very well. And so, you know, if Jack Swarbrick wasn't the athletic director at Notre Dame, there's a lot of things in place right now that wouldn't be in place. And so, you know, you have to take the good with the bad, obviously. I think overall he did a great job, and I think learning together is going to benefit the new guy a lot.
I mean, Jack Swarbrick was going to fight to maintain independence as long as possible. Again,
yes,
because he's a Notre Dame alum, and it means more. You know, it just means more if you're a Notre Dame alum. And again, I think that in you know, for that specific reason, the Pete Bavacqua hire, you know, you can see why that would carry some weight. Base, by the way, says, surprise Vince has the energy for the show after that 4-hour marathon earlier. This is like, you know, finishing a marathon and then going right into the 100-meter sprint.
That's right, baby.
Afterwards.
That's right.
Going from that show to this one.
It's like
it is rapid fire.
Got the baton, and I'm ready to take it home across the finish line. This is great. This is what Fridays are going to be like for me pretty much for the rest of the summer. So I'm ready.
Tommy says he's open to having his mind changed, but not a fan of the new hire right now. And I would be interested in expanding on that a little bit more.
I mean, I think the jury's still out. I don't know anything outside of like his resume. I don't really know anything about this guy. I'll know a lot more when the details of the new TV contract come out and when the details of the new apparel contract come out, because he's going to be an integral part in both of those.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's going to be one hell of a launching off period for him and kind of a how you doing to the university. You know what I mean? And so I'm very interested to see how he does with those two things, because we're all going to form an opinion after both of those things are inked.
And let's be honest, he's got to hit them both out of the park right off the bat.
100%. Like, absolutely.
Kevin Warren, the first big, now this is a little different because he's the commissioner of a conference, but Kevin Warren, the first big decision he had to make not long after taking over as Big Ten commissioner was whether or not the Big Ten was going to play football in 2020, you know, with the pandemic going on. And he was the first one to shut things down. It didn't work out well for him. He saved things 2 years later when he signed that big, fat, lucrative TV contract, even though some of the details of that contract kind of slipped through the cracks on a few people, but still,
Sure.
he made the Big Ten a lot of money on his way out the door.
Absolutely.
And it's the biggest thing, arguably the biggest thing that Pete Bavacqua is going to be involved in his time at Notre Dame.
No doubt.
Is going to probably happen within the next 12 months in that TV contract.
Could not agree more.
We know the apparel deal is going to happen because it expires 1 year earlier.
Could not agree more. And I think that, Jack has left him in a pretty great spot from a coaching standpoint. The big three coaches are all young and in place for the foreseeable future.
Mm-hmm.
And if you start looking at other sports, we talked about this. We did talk about this part on the other show. You look at the other sports, lacrosse, soccer, fencing, all of these other sports, they're all in pretty good shape from a coaching standpoint moving forward. So that's not something he's necessarily going to have to get his hands dirty with. He can focus solely on these negotiations, barring, somebody leaving on their own accord, of course. I mean, that obviously could always happen, but the coaching situation, baseball's not leaving anytime soon. Softball's not leaving
should be
anytime
in good
soon.
place. Should be in a good place.
He's in a good place.
Yeah,
absolutely. So he can focus on these negotiations and hit him out of the ballpark because he's going to need to, because a lot of people are going to form their opinion, Notre Dame included, on how he handles these next couple of negotiations.
Right. Chief Brody, just for Vince, here's a $5. Thanks for the super chat. Here's a $5 because Vince deserves it today.
Thanks, Chief.
Do you get that money since he earmarked it for you?
I wish. That would be great.
By the way, I saw someone comment on one of the videos, I think from yesterday, saying something about we need to put up a Venmo link so people can just direct Venmo.
Yeah, because we get about 65% of what people give us because Google takes the YouTube chunk. And I get a percentage of that. So I think I got about 30 cents of that. So thank you, Chief, for very much. I appreciate it.
John's here. What's up, John?
What's up?
Thanks for stopping by, as always. So, along the same lines, I think one of the biggest questions that came up yesterday after this, one of the two biggest questions, is Big Ten. That was one of the first things that popped up after this. Do you buy or sell that Swarbrick stepping down is a signal that Notre Dame to the Big Ten is imminent?
I do. I sell that 100%. Can you explain to me why people are thinking that? Because he was so pro-independence.
Right.
And it's not like he stepped down like he's done now.
And again, they just hired another alum. The only connection, I guess, is because of the NBC connection. Because NBC has the Big Ten, and I'm having a hard time connecting those dots.
Thank you. And I didn't know if you knew something that I didn't know, because just the naming of this guy does not signal that they're going to the Big Ten. I don't really understand how that's even a thing. And we said it on Monday's or Wednesday's show, right? As long as Notre Dame has access to the national championship, and as long as the TV deal is a good one for them, they're not going to join a conference anytime soon. But you take those things, and guess what? He is going to have direct responsibility to that, right? If he goes out and he signs some ridiculous TV deal, they're probably going to have to join a conference, right? But if he goes out and signs one that is an appropriate $50 million a year, $60 million a year deal, then I think they're going to be just fine, and they're going to be fine with their independence as long as they have a path to the national championship. And I don't think it needs to be more than $50 or $60 million. I don't.
Well, whatever they get, you have to remember you add $10 million to it because they generate $10 million a year from the ACC arrangement.
And they're going to set the standard in apparel whenever they make that deal as well. And you can throw that in there, and they're still going to be, if you're in the neighborhood of $75 million with all of those things added up on an annual basis, you have no need to join a conference. None.
Right. Because the whole, again, if we're using if we're using Bavacqua's NBC connection coming out of being the chairman at NBC Sports, if that is the leap, if that's what makes people take the leap to Notre Dame is joining the Big Ten, so does that mean? And I haven't really seen any explained
Okay,
rationalization.
good.
It's just been, well, here they go. This means they're going to the Big Ten, and that kind of thing. But again, I guess it's just like we say all the time. Add it next on the list of, well, this happened. USC and UCLA went to the Big Ten, so that means Notre Dame is. Just it's like another on the list of things happen. So Notre Dame is joining the
Right.
Big Ten, it seems like.
Right.
But okay. So NBC is televising Big Ten games right now. And so again, if that's the rationalization that NBC, would want Notre Dame to be in the Big Ten, well, they're already televising their games. And if Notre Dame ends up in the Big Ten, we already know it's been reported by multiple outlets within the last year that Notre Dame is the only school that, the Big Ten has a Notre Dame provision for if they join the Big Ten, then the media rights deal, the monetary amount goes from here to here, whatever the number is. The number has not been reported, but there is a Notre Dame provision. So, NBC would still have to pay more, even if they get Notre Dame in that deal. And they also wouldn't be broadcasting every home game because CBS has part of the Big Ten.
Fox.
Fox has part of the Big Ten deal. It's split up. So there wouldn't be any exclusivity for NBC. They'd still get to televise some Notre Dame games, just like they will now, like when Notre Dame goes to USC every other year. And like those, they're going to get Notre Dame and Ohio State, obviously, this year. That happened to fit in pretty nicely with their primetime package. But yeah, I don't understand the leap. And just like whatever we were talking about last week, 1 + 2 does not equal 4. So
no. No, it doesn't.
So yeah, I don't really get that one either. Speaking of the Big Ten, though, they've unveiled their football schedule model for 2024 and 25. This is the new, the conference is expanding to 16 teams by adding USC and UCLA. They're calling it the Flex Protect Plus model. It features no divisions, 11 protected annual games that are evenly spread between the teams. They asked the schools to decide which games they cared about the most. And those games, 11 games, were protected as annual games. Every Big Ten matchup is going to take place twice in a 4-year span, once on each team's home site. USC and UCLA are going to play against every Big Ten team at least once within the next 2 seasons, between 2024 and 2025. Every Big Ten team is going to make at least one trip to Los Angeles in that time span, because of course you have 2 LA teams,
of course,
joining up, which makes it pretty nice for everybody, really. So the general format, we'll get to the 11 protected games here in a minute. The general format, what do you think of it?
Yeah, I dig it. I'm glad they're not doing divisions, because I think the current divisions in the Big Ten are stupid and they're completely they're weighted completely wrong. You've got one division that is much better in a football, from a competitive nature than the other one, right? And the Big Ten championship ends up being just a complete waste of everybody's time. So I like the fact that they're not doing divisions anymore. I like the fact that it's open. I like the fact that they are promising that you'll play everybody at least once over a 2-year span. I think that is actually really, really good. So that means the schedules are going to move around. You're going to see some different teams, but you're going to see everybody, which I do really like.
I'll be curious to see how long that lasts. I mean,
right.
It makes sense when you're adding these 2 new teams from Southern California. What's it going to look like in years 3, 4, and beyond? But yeah, I mean, to your point, I love the fact that you've got these 2 new members of the conference, and they're, everyone's going to get at least one game against each of them in the first 2 years.
I think it's great. I know we're going to talk about the protected games, but it's very interesting, the games that they chose to be protected. I will say that. But I will also say that I'm glad that they are protecting some of these games because they are rivalry games. I mean, most of them. I mean, I'm obviously not an Iowa fan, but a lot of these games are rivalry games for them. And so it makes sense that those games are protected. I would think that they would do. Now, it gives them more wiggle room if they only have 11. But it was like I almost felt like each team should have like 2. You know what I mean? Like 2.
Well, here, let me just run through the list for people maybe who haven't seen them, since you're going down that road here right now. Of course, Michigan, Ohio State was going to be a protected
Obviously.
game. You knew that. Michigan, Michigan State, Minnesota versus Wisconsin, Minnesota versus Iowa, Wisconsin versus Iowa, Nebraska versus Iowa. So Iowa's got 3 protected games. Michigan's got 2. Minnesota's got 2. You got Maryland, Rutgers. You got Indiana, Purdue. Illinois, Purdue is an interesting one. Illinois, Northwestern. And then, of course, USC and UCLA are protected. So you were kind of starting to go down, the old avenue there. Anything really stand out to you
yes.
when you look at that?
So obviously USC and UCLA aren't going to have rivalries in the Big Ten. So I understand why they just have each other as a protected game. Okay, I get that. It's interesting to me that Indiana has 1 protected game. Ohio State only has 1 protected game. Rutgers only has 1 protected game. Maryland, Nebraska.
And this is my biggest takeaway. What Jason is saying, Penn State has none.
That's
the
right.
biggest. There are 16 teams in the conference. Penn State is the only one with no protected games.
Do you think they just turned in their blank card? Like, hey, what games are important to you? We don't care.
Well, that's according to what I read. They let the schools decide the games that are most important to them. So this wasn't the Big Ten saying we want to protect these games. They went to the schools and they said, what games mean the most to you? And now, obviously, like in the case of the 3 Iowa games, those 3 games had to be important to the other side as well. It couldn't just be Iowa saying, well, we want these 3 games. And, like then Nebraska is forced to play it or whatever. Like Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Nebraska all said that those games, against Iowa were important to them. So that's why Iowa gets 3 protected. But it is when you look at balanced schedules and stuff like that.
It's not balanced in any way.
Going forward, yeah, that's right, because Iowa's always going to play those 3 teams. And so there's going to be less of a rotation for Iowa. And you can argue that it benefits Iowa from having those teams.
It's interesting to me about the Penn State thing because that just screams to me Penn State doesn't belong in the Big Ten and never has.
They've been in the Big Ten for 3 decades now, and they have no games that are important.
They've never developed a rivalry with anybody within their conference. What does that tell you?
Right. Exactly.
It tells me that if Notre Dame wanted to make their own conference, I'd be calling Penn State right now. That's what it means to me.
There's a chance that they could play Ohio State, Michigan, and USC all in the same year. There's a chance they could play none of them in the same year. Here's actually what their schedule looks like. They play Michigan State, Ohio State, and USC at home next year. They go to Wisconsin. They go to Indiana, Purdue, Rutgers. They also host Nebraska and Northwestern. But I'm in terms of the big games, I guess I'd include Michigan State since they were at least good a couple years ago, even though they sucked last year. But Michigan State, Ohio State, USC, Wisconsin would be their 4 toughest conference games. 2025, I don't know. Is UCLA that tough? They play Michigan. They go to Michigan and Michigan State and USC. So even though they have no protected games, they're going to play USC and Michigan State both years.
So got a good question here from Mace, and I'm curious to just see what you would say.
Okay.
If Notre Dame did join that terrible conference, which games would you protect?
He said he would protect Penn State, Nebraska, and Michigan State. I
would.
You're going to protect USC.
That's number 1 by leaps and bounds.
Are you going to protect Michigan?
Nope.
Now that's because you don't like Michigan.
Well, no, it's because I don't want to play them every year. I don't have any desire to play them every year. But if they're in the conference, I'm going to play them every 2 years. So I don't want to play them every year. I don't want to give them the satisfaction of playing me every year.
I mean, and that's that's actually a really good point. You don't need to protect that game because it's going to show up every 4 years, no matter what. You're going to get a home and home if they keep the schedule the same. Would you protect Michigan State like Anthony is saying? I wouldn't. I think USC is honestly might be the only one I'd protect.
It's the only one I would protect because you're going to play everybody. If they continue with this format, you're going to play everybody every other year at least, right? So you're going to play them all. I would protect USC. That's it. That's the only one I would protect.
Yeah. See, John says Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State. I mean,
those would be
three high-profile games.
Why, but every year you want to play those three teams every single year. I wouldn't want to
play them every year. No. And I don't think those teams would want to play Notre Dame every year because again, both sides have to agree to it.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want to play those teams every single year because then what are you going to do with your non-conference?
Right.
What are you going to do with your non-conference?
Is it just going to be total cream puff?
Right.
Because you're not going to have the ACC schools anymore.
Right. And you're not going to load up on really tough teams if you have to play Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State every single year.
Right.
No, you're not going to. So you're going to end up playing Western Michigan, Tennessee State, and Chattanooga is what you're going to end up doing. And you're going to be just like every other stupid Big Ten team that has terrible non-conference. No, it's terrible. I would not do that at all.
Tommy's saying USC, Ohio State, Penn State. See, I just, like Notre Dame and Penn State, gosh, it's been, 16, 17 years? I know they played in 2007. I know they played in that awful year. Was it also in 2008 or 2006? It was one of those, I think it was 06 and 07 that they played Penn State. That used to be to me, because they played so often, like growing up, but again,
right.
Once Penn State headed to the Big Ten, you just didn't see it as much.
Right. I wouldn't, like I said, you don't have to protect those games because you're going to play them every other year. So what's the point in protecting them?
Right.
That's my argument.
Yeah.
What's the point in protecting them?
And, again, both sides have to agree to it. So you might want it. Notre Dame might want it, but both sides would have to say, this is going to be a protected game.
Yeah.
You would certainly imagine that USC would want that game with Notre Dame protected, because just like with Navy, the only time that's been interrupted in the last,
and that would obviously be one of the non-conference games that Notre Dame would have would be Navy. Like that obviously would continue. So you scratch out Western Michigan and put Navy in there. But your non-conference games are going to be garbage if you're playing Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State every year.
Yeah, and by the way, this is a 9-game schedule, so you only have 3 non-conference games. So, if you're adding Navy,
now you got 2.
Notre Dame, now you're 10. Now you have 2 games to add.
So
if those are your protected games, I don't think that you're playing. You're probably not going to play any Shamrock Series games anymore, because who are you going to find that's worth playing a Shamrock Series game? If really, you're probably going to schedule a MAC team, and you're going to schedule.
Well, then they've already broken the seal on the 1AA team,
Tennessee State.
So, you know what I mean. So what's the incentive for Notre Dame if you've got those highly ranked teams every single year on your schedule, including USC, by the way, because they're not going to not protect that game. So why would they go out and play a highly ranked ACC team or a highly ranked SEC team or, whatever the case may be? They're not going to. It's just a waste of time.
I agree.
There he is.
Jesse's in the house.
Hello, everyone.
Are you going to another game tonight?
Yes, the Astros are in town.
Oh, the life of a single man.
Yeah, that's right. Get his camper hat on, or his floppy. What do you call those? Safari hat? What do
you
bucket hat? Bucket hat. So we were just talking about the Big Ten schedule, and someone asked, because this the Big Ten has got these protected games, 11 protected games every year. Someone asked, if you're Notre Dame, what games would you want protected?
If you join the Big Ten.
If you were joining the Big Ten, what games?
If any. If any.
Yeah, you don't have to.
You can be like Penn State and have 0.
Penn State has 0. They're the only team in the Big Ten with 0 protected games in this new deal.
I would say USC, and the rest I don't really care about.
Thank you.
For the win. It's
Thank
unanimous.
you. He wasn't even in here to hear it either. So good
That's
job.
right.
Good job. People are saying, well, no, you put Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State as your every year and whatever. Why would you do that? Like that?
I wouldn't mind Michigan. If like Michigan and USC were the two every year,
Well,
I wouldn't mind those.
Vince made a good point because the way they're doing the schedule, it's a rolling. So in every 4-year period, you're gonna play everybody, at least once, if not a home and home, right?
Yeah.
So
you're gonna play everybody every 2 years. Like
so if you're gonna
guaranteed.
play them, if you're gonna play them every 2 years anyway, why do you even need to protect it unless it's USC, which is obviously the rivalry game that has been the most continuous, like they're the only team that's going to be in the Big Ten Conference that you've had a continuous series with. So, like, I agree. Like initially, Michigan and USC was the first one. Michigan came to mind, but I agree with what Vince is saying. Why bother protecting that game when you don't have to, because you're still going to see them regardless every couple of years, and it gives you more flexibility to potentially go out and schedule a better team in the non-conference.
Yeah, because if you play Michigan, Ohio State, USC, Penn State every single year, then where is your motivation to go get any kind of good non-conference schedule? There isn't any, right? Because you're going to have 3 non-conference games. One of them is going to be Navy, so you got 2 non-conference games. Why in the world would you go get an SEC team, a top-tier SEC team, a top-tier ACC, whatever?
Yeah.
What's the motivation?
Yeah. And that's a great point as well. When you sit back and think about it, you're probably not going to schedule any of those. You're just going to schedule either an FCS or a couple of, group of 5 type teams. And again, you're going to have Navy, so you've only got the flexibility to schedule 2 more if you're playing a 9-game conference schedule.
Yeah.
Yep.
Anyway, I hope we never. Like Mike says in the chat, I will bring this up to close out this particular conversation. Says Purdue sort of makes sense, but I hope we never see this scenario.
Yeah. And again,
I agree completely.
And again, why do you need to do that with Purdue? Why would you want them locked in every year when you're just going to see them at least twice in a 4-year
exactly.
period?
Because I get it with like Michigan State, Purdue, there's history there. I get all that. But if you're going to play them every other year, then I'm not going to protect it. I don't need to see the big dumb drum every year. Every other year is enough.
Yes. Thank you. I just thought that whole drum conversation last year drove me batty.
It's hilarious.
So the Arkansas athletic director, you may have heard this make some news, some headlines this week. Hunter Yurachek went to Congress this week to ask for help in what he says is an ongoing crisis of star college players staying in school longer than they used to. Here's the quote from Yurachek. Young men and women are making decisions not to go to Major League Baseball or the WNBA or the NBA because they can make more money in college. Does that make any sense that you can make more money by staying in college than you can by going and being a professional athlete? End quote. What do you guys make of this?
I'll start this one. He honestly sounds stupid for even saying this because there's a much harder chance of making it professionally. So why wouldn't you soak up what you can at the college level? And what it comes down to is just hurt that everyone is staying longer on those scholarships and soaking up more money through the NIL. And it just makes more sense because it's like a 0.01% chance of going from the college to the, to whatever professional sport you're at. So why not give yourself the insurance or the backup of soaking up as much money as you can in college before you go to professional sports? So it's just to me a no-brainer. And the fact that he said something like this, it just to me sounds like he didn't put much thought into saying before he said anything.
The fact that a university employee is wasting his time, money, and resources to go to the Congress to complain about kids staying in school,
right,
is
Kids
asinine.
staying in school. That's another part that even touched. Like they're sorry that they want to finish, college education.
My gosh.
5 years ago,
those NIL money.
5 years ago, 3 years ago, people are complaining because they're leaving too soon, and now you're complaining because they're staying too long.
Because they're sticking around.
The story is someone is always going to complain.
That's right.
Seriously.
It's like the 25-year-old kid who goes back and lives with mom and dad after college. It's like it started happening more and more, and I think to different levels. He never did that. He actually told us, forget you, when we offered to come back.
Goes out
He's
of
like,
there.
I'm gonna go do my own thing.
Yep.
So which is good. You go do your own thing.
Baby bird was ready to leave the nest. There's nothing wrong with that. And
That's right.
It just baffles my mind that he's literally being paid by a university where higher education is supposed to be the most important thing, and he's complaining that they're staying in school too long.
And I mean,
it just what
some of these, some of them might not have finished because again, not everyone, like Notre Dame, you're on a 3-year track to get your undergraduate degree. Most schools aren't like that. So there are people who take 4 and 5 years and even longer to even get an undergrad. So maybe they actually finish their undergrad because they've stayed around a little longer, or if they've got like it took me, in like an extra semester or two, I think, to get mine done. Yeah. And or maybe they've got their undergrad, but they end up with a master's degree as a result. Isn't the purpose supposed to be the education of these people? And it's like, maybe they learn something by being at your school that, look, I don't have to rush out of here and think about being a professional athlete. This is actually the good effect of NIL.
Yes.
That kids are staying in school, whether or not they actually want those degrees, they can get a little bit more out of them. This is the good side of NIL.
Right.
You should be embracing it.
Right. And what's wrong with kids making money while they're in school? Like, why is that the basis for his argument that these kids are going to make more money in school than they would in professional sports? Well, yeah, guess what? The 87th kid on scholarship at Notre Dame, like all the kids on scholarship are making some NIL money, right? With this collective and everything. They're going to make more money doing that than they ever will as a professional athlete because they will never be a professional athlete. Okay. What is wrong with that? I don't understand why that's a problem.
Jason asks if the number of earned degrees are going up. I haven't seen any data on that yet. It's probably still a little bit early.
Probably a little early.
Only been a thing for a couple of years at this point, but I will be curious to kind of see where that ends up. But, like Caitlin Clark, as an example, like she was a junior this past season. She's got one more year left. And she was saying, like during the tournament, she was doing an interview talking about, I'm going to stay for next year, and I might even stay a year beyond that because of exactly what he's saying. The NIL opportunities, it's definitely, just we watch these stupid commercials every time March Madness comes around, and there's an NCAA championship. About 99% of those are going to go pro in something other than sports. And it's like, if that's the case, why wouldn't you want them to be able to take full advantage of every opportunity they have while they're in school?
And I think women's basketball is a premier
the
money
money for WNBA is obviously nowhere near what it is for the NBA.
Exactly.
And if you can make more by staying a couple of extra years in school, that can literally end up being life-changing money. With, some of the, like, if you're, the high-end athlete, like the Livy Dunn, for example, at LSU, the gymnast who's got the
millions,
the casual wear commercials on TV and stuff like that right now. Like, take advantage of it. Make it while you can, because
absolutely.
Last I checked, there's not a professional gymnastics league. No,
it's called the Olympics, and that's not professional.
Exactly right. So that's exactly right. This one, I'm curious to see what the responses are, because we've got two dads here, and we've also got a son. So LeBron James wants to play at least, and I've been saving this for a Friday when we're all together. This has been out there for a little while, so I apologize if you've already heard this, but LeBron, of course, wants to play at least a couple more years so he can play with his son, Bronny, who's going to be a freshman at USC this fall. It's a dream situation for a parent, but Greg Doyle from the Indianapolis Star says it's a son's nightmare. So I guess we can start off with the son on this show. What do you guys think about this? Is it a dream? Is it a nightmare? What would this be?
I don't think it's a dream or a nightmare. I would say it's more so of a dream than a nightmare, but to me, it's going to be obviously on the back half, or not even the back half, like the back. Like these are the last couple years that LeBron's gonna be able to muster together. And so I think it's cool and a good idea because I think LeBron can show Bronny what it takes to make it in the NBA and kind of help him along the way a little bit, right? Like show him the training, the off-season workouts, what it means to go through an entire NBA season. Like his dad has done it for 20 years now and is one of the greatest to do it. So obviously he knows what he's doing. And I feel like it's a dream situation because he can help you get acclimated to the league a little bit better. It's like your best friend and your dad at the same time and on the NBA level. He can help you with the transition. And obviously, it's going to be, again, LeBron's not going to be at the top of his game anymore. So I think he's okay with, dedicating more time and energy to kind of helping his son along in the transition. So I think it's great for both of them.
I don't necessarily see it as a negative. I think if the scenario was like me and my son, would it be cool to say that we did it? Like the Griffeys, for example. I thought that worked out pretty darn well. They've got stories to tell. They went back-to-back home runs, that kind of a thing. There's going to be a very limited amount of time where you're going to be able to do that. And so I respect that. Like from a dad standpoint, to say that you played the highest level of basketball possible with your son, I think that would be pretty cool. Now, it would be like a true dad moment, which I don't think the son would necessarily appreciate. I will say that I don't know that Bronny will appreciate being in his dad's shadow.
That's gotta suck the entire time.
I don't know that would go over very well. But I agree with Jesse that yes, you can show him the way, and from a very practical standpoint, because you're on the same team. Like this is how we do it. This is how you should do it. That kind of a thing, which you can't really do as a parent who's not on the team anymore. So I get that part of it. So yes, it's a dream for the dad. It is a convenience for the son. And I think he would want like maybe 1 year of that, and then it's time to move on.
Yeah, that would be the question. Just how long does it last? How long are you going to stay around, Dad?
Yeah, right.
The Griffey thing was the first thing. Like, honestly, when I think of Ken Griffey Jr., like when someone says his name, one of the first things I think about is like just seeing those clips of them with the Seattle Mariners.
Yeah.
When Junior was coming up and the fact that they got to play together. It's a once in a lifetime deal. Not, it's so rare.
Oh yeah.
That just one member of the family gets to that level. But when father and son can also have played at that level, and not only played at that level, but be close enough in age to be able to overlap and play together, you just don't see it. So I think that, like Doyle is saying, it's a son's nightmare. Well, you haven't spent time in that household yet.
Right.
So you don't like
it just depends on the relationship.
Yeah, that's exactly
100%.
Right. And I don't think LeBron would be pushing for it if he didn't think that this was something that his son also wants to be a part of.
Like the Griffeys clearly had fun with it. You know what I mean? Like at least on the outside looking in. Like I've seen some interviews like after the fact, and it appears as though they really enjoyed that time. Like the one time like Griffey went over and caught the ball in front of his dad, a fly ball, and they were joking around in the dugout. I think it can work out if you have a good relationship with your son. And from all accounts, look, I am not a LeBron fan by any stretch of the imagination, but it does appear that he's a good dad. It very much appears to be that he's a good dad and he probably has a good relationship with his kid.
Right.
And so it probably will work out just fine. And it'll probably be something that they can talk about forever.
Exactly. And again, like, the question then is also how much can they appreciate the moment and,
right. Absolutely. And
play together
Bronny won't appreciate the moment for years to come.
Exactly.
Like, he won't appreciate it in the moment. He won't, because he's a kid, and kids don't appreciate things. There's certain things Jesse doesn't appreciate right now that someday he will appreciate, like being able to pick up and go to the Guardians game whenever he wants. Once there's little pitter patter of feet running around, that's not going to be the case. He'll be like, oh, those were the days. You know,
there's things I'm grateful now that I wasn't grateful for 10 years ago.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
There you go. Like, I'm sure he wasn't, grateful that he had his dad coaching him, and like,
I wouldn't say that.
Well, I'll tell you,
Did I get mad sometimes? Yeah.
Right. But that's going to happen because, when you've got father-son, coaching situation, you're always going to be pushed, whatever, a little bit. Like, it took me, almost into, talking about like appreciating the moment and the opportunity. It took me almost till the end where you really do start appreciating it, and you like Mike Bianco, the Ole Miss baseball coach. He's had 3 sons who have played college baseball. None of them played for him at Ole Miss. One of them played at Ole Miss at the same time, playing against him, and the others played
North Carolina State.
Yeah, and I think the other played at like a smaller, Louisiana, one of those kind of. But none of them played for him, and I think it's all kind of case by case, like he let them, I think, kind of go out and do their own thing.
Yeah.
So here's an interesting one. The College Game Day podcast matched Ted Lasso characters with college football coaches and players this week. So which football coaches or players would you cast as these characters? Now, do you want me to read the whole list, or do you want to go one by one and we kind of go around and see who we match with each
one by one?
Okay. So let's start with the guy at the top, Ted Lasso. Who are you matching up with Ted Lasso? Who would you cast as Ted Lasso?
This was a tough one because obviously Ted Lasso is a very specific kind of a person. So I kind of was thinking like the aw shucks kind of a thing. And I know that you're not going to like this, Sean, but I picked Dabo Sweeney as my Ted Lasso.
Interesting. Yeah. I was wondering, I think the Ted Lasso is the hardest just because of the Ted Lasso demeanor, and most football coaches aren't necessarily known for the Ted Lasso demeanor. You know, so
I struggled. I couldn't think of anyone.
This is tough.
Think of anyone?
You got nothing?
I couldn't think of anyone. I also didn't have a ton of time to think about it today.
I went with Lane Kiffin for mine.
Really?
Like you went with Dabo. Like I think of Dabo as a little bit more hard. Like Lane Kiffin in general is a little more, like lighthearted. He's definitely young, especially like if you look at his Twitter.
He's I think he's more so rude to the media. I think his players love him and respect him because of his patience and willingness to give guys kind of second chances and opportunities, and understanding like the development of young men, I think is a good comparison between the two.
So you think Lane Kiffin is a solid choice then?
I do.
I'm surprised neither one of you said Marcus Freeman, because I actually thought about him.
I didn't pick him for any of these.
I didn't either.
Yeah. I don't see him meshing up with any of the 4 of these.
So the next one is Coach Beard. Jesse, were you able to come up with a Coach Beard? Are you just gonna take a pass on this whole thing?
I told you I didn't have time to think about this today. I can't just think of something on the spot.
Oh, you got to be better on your improv, buddy. So
I still want it. I want you to come up with someone by the time this is done.
So I thought Coach Beard is just kind of like a wacky, kind of a different wavelength.
Marches to the beat of his own drum.
Yes. So that's why it's Mike Leach.
Dang it. That's
who I've got
getting ready to come
into
my mind. Yeah.
Unfortunately, Mike Leach is passed, but that's who I have.
Yes.
I was going to say the late great Mike Leach.
Yeah. Right. How could it not be Mike Leach? Like that one was the easiest.
The funniness, the goofiness, the randomness.
Mike Leach, because with all his sayings, and he was like sitting there with his nose in books, and like just kind of riffing every once in a while. And
this was the easiest one by far.
I thought so as well.
Immediate for me.
Now, Roy Kent is an interesting one. I guess Vince will just start with you. Since
Yeah, because
Bucket Hat
I've got
doesn't
something
have
written down on,
Yes.
but so the way I went about this one is I went with the person that always seems like they're in a bad mood.
I wonder if we've got the same one again.
I went Nick Saban.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I went Nick Saban. I got a
thought
lot
about
of
him.
yeah. I've got a lot of guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a lot of guys that are very well known, obviously. But he just always kind of comes off as just kind of like the grumpy old man, and that's how Roy Kent comes off to me. And so I went with Nick Saban.
My Roy Kent was Bill Belichick, since no one thought I would be ready for that one.
All right.
College coach,
Not
Jesse.
really-
That's
not
not
really
really
a
the
college
directions.
But at least
whatever.
you came
Mike
up with somebody, I
Krzyzewski.
guess.
The college football coach, Jesse.
Have you started pre-gaming in your house there? Like, is that
No,
what's
my
is that what's
brain
going
is
on?
scrambled. It is scrambled eggs.
Oh gosh.
So mine, and again, Saban came to mind. I
Okay.
tried to really think, like, go outside, like off a little bit more off the beaten path, I
Right.
guess. So I thought and I thought and I thought, and my Roy Kent is Pat Narduzzi,
Oh,
the Pittsburgh
interesting.
coach.
Yeah,
because
right,
the guy
right.
is always just what you said. He's always grumpy.
Yes, he
Always
is.
bitching about something. It's like every week Pat Narduzzi is going to complain about something, and
It's good.
he's never happy with anybody. So I went with Pat Narduzzi for my Roy Kent.
That's good. I like that one. That one's really good. Did you come up with a college football coach, Jesse?
No.
Okay. All right, fine.
Last one, we're matching Ted Lasso characters with college football coaches or players. Last one that we're
Oh, I
do
think I actually kind of came up with someone.
for
Steve,
who? Roy.
Steve Spurrier would have been my Roy Kent.
Okay. Still
All
going
right.
back in the well a little bit.
That's all right.
Okay.
Well, at least it's a college football coach.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Nate the Great, as Ted called him. Who's going to be Nate?
So here's kind of how I took this one, because I haven't
Okay.
watched this season, and I'm sure they developed his character more this season. But the way they ended the last season with him, he
Just
kind of
run
went from a happy-go-lucky, plucky, young coach, right, to the enemy, to like the
He went the Darth Vader path.
he went to the dark
He
side.
went to the dark side.
He went to the dark. So he was young and up and coming and a great guy, and then he went to the dark side. This is an easy one. It's Brian Kelly.
This one for me.
I thought about him, but I've got
This one was thrown out there earlier. Really smart, young head coach. Kind of got into some issues, betrayal, whatever. I like Lane Kiffin for this one. Old Lane Kiffin, not current Lane Kiffin though.
Okay, that's fair. I see that. I could see
Jesse.
it.
Jesse is doing this like it's 2010. Like all of his answers are
What?
like it's
I didn't know how to be
2010.
current.
I mean,
I
we all
should've
did
just
pick
gave
Mike
up
Leach,
with
who's
no
dead.
answers, I
So,
guess.
I mean, I guess there's that.
My Nate. Now this guy is not a head coach right now,
Okay.
but the dark side leap. I went with Tommy Reese.
Ooh. Okay.
Young.
Yeah.
Young, left Notre,
Smart.
like maybe, like I'm not saying, like he felt underappreciated and he, cussed out the boss on the way out the door like Nate did, but he made the leap. He went from Notre
did.
Dame wearing the white hat to wearing the black hat.
Yeah.
In Alabama.
Literally a black hat.
Yeah.
Okay, I could dig that one. I see it for sure. Yeah, if it would have been an even better fit if Tommy Reese had left to be a head coach. Like that would have been an even better
Right.
scenario. But it still fits.
Right. Can't be perfect, I guess.
Right.
So, all right, that wasn't bad. Maybe we'll do this again next week and we can pretend it's 2030 and Jesse can predict.
That's what it'd be now.
By the way, Tommy was asking
I should have
Ari,
just never joined this.
the
podcast
coaching.
today.
Tommy asked, did your coach ever make you run extra for being late because your dad got you to practice late? Your dad and coach being the same person. Well, as Jesse knows, coach was never late. And if players were late, that was an issue. So, am I
I
right?
don't think I had extra running here and there.
Well, I mean, by the time you're like a junior and senior, you were.
But it
driving
wasn't because
yourself.
of being late. It was because of other stuff. Yeah, that's right.
Right. I just remember one time you were so mad at me and I was so fed up. I just turned away and walked away. And that didn't go over very well.
Well, but it was probably the best thing you could have done in the moment. I mean, it was bound to happen at some point, right?
That's a fact.
The Cheez It Bowl is changing its name to the Pop Tarts Bowl. Which would you rather snack on?
Cheez Its for sure. I think Pop Tarts are overrated. I'll say it out loud. I'm a huge chip fan, cracker fan, whatever it might be. Lay's, Cheez Its, pretzels, crackers, anything. I am a huge snack chip fan. And there's only like two good Pop Tart flavors, one of them being brown sugar and the other being the ice cream sundae one. And then after that, I really don't care. So
ice cream sundae. What
the heck? Yeah, you lost me at ice cream sundae, but I'm with you with the cinnamon sugar. But I think it's the orig. It's the best. It's by far the best one that's out there. I will say that this is a terrible name change. It's Cheez It by far. It's not even close. If you're gonna have a breakfast pastry, it should not be Pop Tart. Pop Tarts are overrated. Completely agree with that. Wow. It should be toaster strudels. Toaster strudels are so much better than Pop Tarts. So much better. Now, Pop Tarts a little bit more mobile, but toaster strudels are better tasting.
But less, you don't have to with the
right.
With the
so that's why it's not as mobile because you got the frosting and all that. But
I do like a good warm cherry Pop Tart. I will say that cherry with the frosting on the outside, coming piping hot. But the Cheez It is the way to go. And remember,
oh my gosh.
Okay, so what's your favorite Cheez It flavor?
As we learned from our friend Carter Carls, and after the Cheez It Bowl last year, or during the Cheez It Bowl, one Cheez It is a Cheez It. Multiple Cheez Its are Cheez It crackers, according to the Cheez It people. Like, it's not Cheez Its.
Ridiculous.
Cheez It crackers.
It's Cheez Its. It'll always be Cheez Its. I don't care what they say.
Yes. I just wonder if Carter is going to get a Pop Tarts jacket this year for blowing up, after he
might have to.
Sweet Cheez It jacket last year.
I mean, I'm going to answer Jesse's question. My favorite Cheez It is the new, or they're fairly new, the duos with the Parmesan and the cheddar or whatever.
I'm a fan of the original. I've always liked the original.
But you're
great. I knew you were gonna say that.
I'm good with the original, but the duos are so much better.
I used to. This is very nutritious. In college, get a can of raviolis.
Oh, okay.
Can of raviolis. Heat up the raviolis and then take some Cheez It crackers, Cheez-Its, and crunch them up. Little Cheez It topping on top of the raviolis. That was
nice. I got
Chef
you.
Boyardee. Yeah.
Yep.
I'm a white cheddar fan.
John's looking for Notre Dame to play in the Pop Tart Bowl. Jason said his first day of high school tryouts, his dad beamed him in the cage and put a knot on his elbow. And see, here's the thing that maybe Jesse doesn't appreciate. Like any scolding that he got when I was the coach is a pittance in comparison to the welt he once put on my rib cage with a line drive.
You were throwing with no batting screen in front of you.
That's what led to the battings. We bought the L screen soon after that.
You didn't have the L screen? Well,
he wasn't in high school. It was.
Oh, gotcha.
I was still
by the time in high school, there was no way I wasn't, because this was probably when he was 10 or 11 years old.
Gotcha. So you got yourself a personal L screen.
I remember too, our marvelous varsity coach my first couple of years. We were doing this drill where he was having us go opposite field, and that's fine and all, but like he set up in a way
behind the screen. He was doing
and he would feed it to you and just trust that you were going to take it the other way. And I accidentally didn't take one the other day, and I poked him with it, and I felt so bad. But I mean, he was the idiot not behind a screen. So
There's no way I would trust a high school kid.
Yeah, like we're talking
No.
about opposite field batting as on a
For a
like
14-year-old.
at Adams High
super
School.
intelligent.
At
Yeah.
Adams High School,
Jason is noting your power, Jesse. That's
I did have some of that.
very true. He was known to hit the ball hard. Drove him to the gaps. Anthony, Vince, how did you balance the dean position and a national celebrity at IB?
Very carefully. Overloaded it in the summer and in the fall, and then kind of ease out in the spring. So, it's funny because most people I talk to have no idea what IB is, and they have no idea that I do this on a regular basis.
That's crazy.
But it's funny because there'll be like a random student walking through the hallway, and they kind of like,
Do I know you?
yeah. But I have been pointed out at football games, at Penn football games. I'm standing there like monitoring the student section, and some guy came up to me. He's like, "You're from IB, aren't you?" It's like randomness is always fun, but yeah, it's not there's not a national celebrity, and I'm totally okay with that.
And they come out of the blue, like when I hear somebody say, "Hey, you're from IB, right?"
Yeah.
And it's like I have to stop and think for a minute, like where I am, and it's like I start processing IB. Yeah, I am.
Yeah,
it's
I know. Seriously,
it's
fun though. I love.
You guys are
meeting
welcome
people.
for the free $5.
Zach, thanks for the super chat. Says money for Jess to buy a new hat, so he feels for you.
I mean, I got a bunch in the closet. Whatever team you like, I can go put it on real quick. I probably have it.
That's again the things you'll appreciate when you're older.
Quick, Jess, who's your Ted Lasso? Still can't think of it. Man. Enjoy the baseball game tonight. Let's just
Oh, that's great.
my goodness. I don't even know.
See, I have someone, but they just retired.
Who?
The old K-State coach.
I mean, we did a dead guy, so
Right.
The old
we did
Kansas
Mike
State
Leach.
coach,
Bill Snyder.
Bill Snyder.
Okay.
bad.
See, I can get on board with that.
He comes off as a little curmudgeonly to me, but okay, I can live with it. I mean, and he's Kansas too, and Ted Lasso's character is from Kansas, so
I'm
Tommy
trying.
Guns,
Okay.
Mark Wahlberg. All right, we will wrap it up on that. Jesse's got a baseball game to go to. Vince has got things to do.
I got to stretch.
Seriously. Thanks for being here tonight, guys. Talk to you next week, the 1-year anniversary of this show.
Is it really? That's
Yes.
right. We started in. That's right.
We did our first show the day after Notre Dame beat Tennessee to go to
That's
the
right.
College World Series the day after Super Regionals ended. Super Regionals start today, and they will be done Sunday or Monday, depending on how the weather goes at the different sites. But Monday, the day after the Super Regional last year, we did our first IB Nation Sports
Love
Talk
it.
show.
I'm ready for the anniversary
Time
celebration.
flies.
All right, bring some champagne. We'll be here.
Doing flashing his lights. I don't know what's
Hit the
happening.
like button, subscribe, rate, and review. Have a great weekend, and we will talk to you Monday on IB Nation Sports Talk.
Yeah.